this video, I'm going to share with you 8 revelations that I have had from coaching poker over the years. These things can just be the difference between success and failure if you're looking to make poker a profitable hobby, career, or something in between. Definitely watch this video all the way to the end. It's extremely probable that at least a few of these will have a profound effect on changing your poker trajectory for the better. Let's get into it. Revelation number 1. Performance has more to do with win rate than knowledge. Don't get me wrong, knowledge is a prerequisite. You need it. I didn't spend hundreds of hours making a fully comprehensive poker theory course because knowledge wasn't important, but I equally knew that I was giving people the raw ingredients for success and not a secret formula to guarantee that success. Because if you take a player who scores 3 out of 10 in performance and 9 out of 10 in knowledge, and you compare that person to someone who scores 9 out of 10 in performance and 3 out of 10 in knowledge, that second player with the high performance score is going to have the better chance of beating the game every single time, because performance is about the buttons that you press that ultimately affect your EV and your win rate. Performance has 2 main aspects to it. The first is pre-game, and we're going to refer to that as intent, and the second one is in-game, and we're going to call that focus. Intent is why you sit down to play, and it's often not an explicit thing that you say out loud or say consciously in your head, but it's just a background purpose. We're always motivated by this sense of background purpose. When we wake up in the morning and we go and brush our teeth, we're not thinking about it, but our purpose in that action is to not get gum disease and not have our teeth fall out and to be healthier, right? It's there subconsciously. When you sit down to play poker, you want to make sure that your intent is something that's to do with progress that's under your control and not to do with stuff that's out with your control. For example, if you woke up in real life rather than poker and said, I'm going to try to win the lottery today, your friends would ask if you were feeling all right. That's a bad, irrational intent to have as you go about your day. And similarly, when you sit down to play a poker session, an intention like I'm going to try to win money, I'm going to try to move up stakes, these are bad intents and we'd never admit to having them consciously. But ask yourself, do you have those intentions subconsciously? Do you hope that you're going to win? Do you dread losing? Do you sometimes feel like you really just have to have a winning day today in order for poker to be a positive experience? Ask yourself when you sit down to play, what am I trying to achieve? And try to make your intention to be the best form of your poker self, to be curious and make good decisions. That's the ultimate intent when it comes to poker. The second aspect of performance is your in-game focus level. You can be really dialed in or really dialed out, and both of those are bad. You want to be in the sweet spot where the cadence of your thoughts is just right, where you're in the moment, you're in the zone, and you feel like your brain is moving along in tempo with the poker session and not struggling against it. If you're too dialed in, it's going to feel like there are too many conscious thoughts. Your brain can't organize them in time, it can't keep up, you're timing out, you're panicking, you're going into a freeze mode. The stakes are too high. You've placed such stress upon getting everything right that you cannot relax enough in order to get those things right. Underfocus happens when you zone out, when you autopilot, when you button click, when you make yourself a bystander of the session rather than the protagonist. And both overfocus and underfocus can be defense mechanisms against not trying your best. And you might want to not try your best because it's a lot of effort to try your best and it feels intimidating, or it might be that you're afraid of failure, or it might be another reason. But in game, every few minutes, just remind yourself, I need the right level of focus. Am I underfocused or overfocused right now? Am I too zoned out and autopilot, or am I too dialed in? And just gently calibrate it like you're turning up the volume until it's just right, and then sit with that feeling and try to replicate that for the rest of your session. If you can get this point right, you can add 50, 60 hours worth of the EV you would gain from poker knowledge in a few minutes. It's a very low-hanging, juicy fruit. Go after it. Don't neglect theory. We'll come to that in a minute. But do ask yourself, how am I actually applying myself when I sit down to play cards? Revelation number 2. Improving your F game nets the most EV of all. Your F game is your worst possible performance in poker, and it's driven by a threatened mental state culminating in fight, flight, or freeze. Other games, sports, and disciplines tend to immerse you more in the actual act of the thing. When you play tennis, you're absorbed in just trying to hit the ball, running around. All of this is like a physical harmony to it. You don't have time to be drawn into this really threatened fight, flight, or freeze state. But when you're playing poker, you're risking resources in an adversarial way, and that triggers a lot of centers in the brain that we'd rather it didn't, that make us feel like we're not okay, that make us feel threatened, like we aren't going to survive. And it's that hardwired evolutionary stuff that makes us freeze in the middle of a hand. We have all these thoughts whizzing around chaotically. We can't access any of them. They're not coherent. We click a button because time is running out and berate ourselves for making a terrible mistake. Let me know in the comments if that sounds like a familiar experience. Freeze is a very common reaction to when we're too dialed in, when we have too many thoughts, when everything feels too important. We call even though we know it's bad. We berate ourselves for said call. Or we might flee. We might close down the tables right away when something goes wrong. We might not call the turn bet because we can't handle the feeling of missing the draw and folding on the river. We might not c-bet the flop because we feel like no one ever folds to us today. These things all contribute to your F game. Going from your A game to your F game is often a matter of becoming overwhelmed by the survival-based human mental programs. Therefore, my advice for making your F game better is to check in with yourself. Ask yourself to what extent your subconscious is activating these programs of feeling threatened, and just bringing yourself back into that present moment and trying to be curious about the spot at hand. Put a time limit on the session. Okay, I'm feeling fight, flight, or freeze. I'm really not playing well. I'm in danger of playing my worst poker here. Play for another 20 minutes. Just see if you've got the discipline, the willpower to hold it together. If you can bring yourself back to that happy-ish, focused, curious state just for 20 minutes, and then end the session, take a break, try and rinse and repeat. Your game will get stronger. You'll build the muscle of resilience, but you cannot just play for 2 hours in a state of frozen brain fog. That's how you destroy your chances. That's how you fritter away your bankroll. It's how you basically fail in your pursuit to becoming a successful poker player. Revelation number 3. Trying to play poker without sufficient theory is like running a race with a ball and chain attached to your ankle. I've seen it before. Players trying to compensate for what they don't know, following database exploits, playing in soft games, coming up with their own thought processes that they habitualize and just using them over and over again, even though they're not very good, filling in the gaps however they can that only a proper poker education can really give you. Poker's a really difficult thing. Imagine trying to become a physicist without studying physics. But because poker's a game, because it presents itself to the human mind a bit like a video game. You sit down at computer, there's mouse and keyboard, you click button, you win or you lose, you get dopamine hit. And because poker has that video game-like structure to it in some ways, it's easy to think you don't have to study for it, because how much do you study to play a video game? Maybe a little bit. You like watch a YouTube guide if you're stuck or something, but you don't grind out hours of study. You don't embark on a formal education for playing a video game, but you need to do that for poker. By the way, speaking of embark, we still have a code embark25 that will get you 25% off everything at Carrot Corner, including the Carrot Poker School and our full access golden Carrot Pass. So the best way to understand studying to become a poker player is like taking a university degree. That's why I made that course. That's why I made the Carrot Poker School. It's very long. It's extremely comprehensive, A to Z, leaving no stone unturned. And you can't get that overnight, but you do need to gradually build up your poker theory. And if you start doing that now, you're going to be in a much better position a year from now. What you don't want to do, trust me, I've seen this so many times, is end up like the student that shows up on my doorstep for coaching and says, Pete, I've been playing for 12 years, but I don't have any theory. I've been playing in soft live games. I've been surviving. I've been table selecting. I've managed to win at a low amount at a low stake, but now I want more. And it's like, well, we can try, we can do it. Perhaps, but it would have been so much easier if you just got poker theory installed in your brain earlier on before you built all these bad habits and coping mechanisms. Don't neglect your theory. Start now. It's a long, arduous process gaining poker theory, but if you're fascinated enough and curious enough, it'll come more easily to you than if you're dreading it and putting it off. The fourth revelation I've gained in my years of coaching poker is that many poker students unintentionally crave validation more than progress. This manifests itself in coaching by them wanting to speak a lot, wanting me to pick up on things they're saying that are correct and tell them that it's correct. But very often their thought process is just this overgrown jungle of thoughts that gives them zero chance of finding the right line for the right reasons if they were actually in a poker session. And they might do that outside of coaching as well, whereby their intent, as we talked about in point 1 on performance, is not actually about doing their best or playing as well as they can, but it's about having a winning session to claw validation from. The more insecure you are in anything, in life as well, not just in poker, the more you will seek validation in the short term in a sort of hedonistic way from something that might not be a reliable long-term thing in your life. So when a poker student shows up for a session and they're kind of resistant to what I'm saying, or they're zoning out about, or they're wanting to talk more than learn, I realize that they're actually there for the wrong reason. They don't know that they're there for the wrong reason. They think they're learning poker to get better at poker, but actually they want to feel better from poker. They're using it as a means to an end. Ask yourself honestly, does this sound like me? Do I ever sit down to poker to try to feel good about myself as a poker player? Do I ever talk with people to try to showcase what I know rather than to actually get better? You have to smash yourself down a fair amount in order to rebuild yourself in the most productive way. Sometimes you have to really accept what you don't know, and you have to sit in that ignorance and be like, God, I just don't know this thing. I just need to let go of all of my preconceptions and start from the beginning. And some people need to do that in poker. Some people need to do a lot of uninstalling. But for now, to what extent is validation or the need for it guiding you? And do you genuinely try to learn out of curiosity, or do you try to get better at poker as a means to some end, or to feel better about yourself? This won't apply to everyone. It will apply to some people. It takes a lot of honesty to accept that it's going on, but once you identify that your ego's doing that your ego's like, I need to feel good in this moment, once you empty out your brain of these kind of cravings, you free up the space for genuine growth and progress. Revelation number 5. Variance deludes almost every poker student I've ever worked with. It's so incredibly common for people to be around break even when they come to me for coaching. They're serious enough that they've plugged major leaks. They're no longer hemorrhaging money, but they're stuck. They can't break through 50NL or whatever stake it is they're trying to beat, but they have winning months and winning weeks and winning days. And when their graph goes up, the brain says, aha, an opportunity to feel good about myself. I played well today. I won today. The two must be at least partially linked. Therefore, this is a breakthrough. And you might not think consciously this is a breakthrough when you win 10 buy-ins, but I bet your brain is releasing chemicals that are equivalent to that belief in some way. And that is, in the long term, kind of a poker career killer. Because if you think after 15 buy-ins of an upswing that you're now a winner, you might stop studying, you might get less curious, you might start to become entitled or expect things, and you might become hopeful. And when you become hopeful, you're sort of saying, I need things to go this way because if they went the other way, it would be bad, and I couldn't really handle that. And that makes you very vulnerable. And then when variance does its thing and inevitably comes around and punches you in the face, it's 3 times worse than it needed to be. If you've not yet won at poker, that's okay. If you've been losing at 4BB per 100, maybe that's because you tilt a lot. That's still you. That's still part of your game. That's you. You know, if you were a minus 4BB per 100 player, but you wouldn't be if you tilted, everyone would be many BB higher per 100 if they didn't tilt, or if they had a stronger mental game. Don't use that as an excuse. You are where you are, accept it, and work towards being a better player objectively, so that in a couple of years' time, you will have a better graph than you would have if you hadn't done that work. Do not surf the waves of variance. It might be thrilling in the short term, but you will just end up with a bunch of horrible salty water in your lungs. Revelation number 6. Your love for the game of poker must be of the thing itself. I took that last part from Immanuel Kant, philosopher a couple of 100 years ago. No, Kant, K-A-N-T, people in London. It's not a rude word. I know you say it that way, but no, that's genuinely his name. And Kant had this thing called the categorical imperative, and it was about people, as I recall. It was like, don't treat other humans as means to your end. You need to treat them as ends in and of themselves, meaning like don't use people, don't be a Machiavellian, psychopathic manipulator, basically. And these days, I think we kind of agree with that sort of moral code, right? We look at people that harvest and exploit and use people as parasites, as harmful to human flourishing, because they are. And when you do that of a thing, when you do that with like a game like poker, that you treat it as solely a means to your ends, it might not be immoral in the same way, but you devalue that thing, you cheapen it somewhat, because then it doesn't even need to be poker that you're interested in. It could just be anything. You could just have like a job in a bank and it would be equally pragmatic. If you find that you're kind of interested in poker, like you find it quite captivating, and when you're running good and when you're winning, you might do a bit of study and you might get engrossed in it a little bit, but then as soon as you run bad, you become the victim, the protagonist, the main character, and your focus is gone from the thing itself. That's a cycle that's going to continue endlessly, and there are only two ways out of this trap. The first is to accept that you don't love poker enough and you're just not interested enough in it and you're just going to quit, or you're going to do something else instead that you're more interested in, that you can get fully immersed in, because you'll find things like that. Or you do love poker and you can become really curious and immersed in it for its own beauty, but there's something in you that's stopping you right now and you need to get that treated. Usually it's like a mental game leak, right? Or maybe you need to get better at the game in order to get immersed in it, and it's a bit of a catch-22 because the thing you need to get off the ground is the thing you're aiming at. But if you just get a bit better, you do a bit of study and you force it at first, you just use some willpower to like make sure you get study in like a few days, you might get into a regime where you become engrossed and it becomes second nature. But yeah, it's so important to play poker for the thing itself. I've said this many times, but it has to be on this list because I've just seen this sink so many poker players that otherwise could have been successful. Revelation number 7. Weeding the garden is as important as growing flowers. If you have a bunch of horrible weeds all over the place, no one's going to see the nice stuff that you plant. If your poker game is a sprawling mess of irrational thoughts that you've picked up in the card room sat next to recreationals, check out the last video for an explanation on that, then you're going to have a lot of shit in your poker thought process. You're going to say things like, yeah, do you have ace king? Yeah. You're going to say things like that, right? If you spent too much time in the card room. And it's not just being around live poker players for years that does this. It's also just being around you, because when you don't have enough good stuff, when you're lacking theory, like we talked about in Revelation number 3, you haven't used the code EMBARK25 at Carrot Corner, you forgot to use that, and so you didn't save hundreds on your poker education, you might end up making up your own theory to compensate for what you don't have. You might ingrain the same faulty thoughts over and over again just so that you have something that you can think about during a hand. You might talk with peers that have those same faulty thoughts. You might watch content that is not really educational. It's like a learn entertainment type thing on YouTube, and you just watch people casually chat about poker so that outsiders to the game, outsiders, non-nerds, people with a life, so those people can understand, right? Like that sort of commentary. And that does, whether you like it or not, teach you a load of bad subconscious habits, and it puts weeds in the garden of your poker thinking. And it's really, really hard to teach a student with tons of weeds because you're constantly having to erase bad thoughts in order to plant new ones. And I think the main advice I would give here is that the sooner you get the good thoughts in there, the better. But go ahead in the next couple of weeks and make a list of the things that you think about the game that you don't actually really believe anymore, that represent your game in like an older, weaker state, and get rid of these thoughts once and for all. If you talk about board coverage and betting for board coverage, yeah, you're probably never ever going to win at poker, but it happens. Anyway, moving on. Revelation number 8. For a competitive discipline, professionalism is very low on average in poker. People talk about tough fields to break into, right? Like trying to make it as an investment banker, trying to make it as a lawyer, studying medicine, trying to get into Harvard or Oxford or Cambridge or whatever. And when they discuss those things, there's generally the implication that you have to work really, really hard and you have to bring an ultra professional, conscientious version of yourself to the table to have any chance of success. I would put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that because in poker you have to beat people by X plus rake. So if the rake is 10 big blinds per 100 hands, you have to beat people by 14 to have a +4 BB win rate. I would put it to you that the modern poker climate is a harsh competitive environment, just like getting into law at Harvard or whatever you want to insert there. Yet, the professionalism of aspiring poker players does not match the harshness of that environment. It's like training for a marathon by running only 5Ks. It doesn't add up. Poker's a game, yes, it's played on a screen with a mouse and keyboard, and yes, it has that fun dopamine hit side to it. That doesn't mean that it's not deadly serious, and it doesn't mean that you're not fighting over precious scraps of EV in every single hand that you play, because you are. Edges are small, reg on reg relative to rake, and against recreational players your edges can be bigger, but you really need to know what you're doing to drive those edges up. You need to get a good education in poker, code embark 25. You need to work with peers, you need to talk to people, you need to study on your own in a solver independently of courses as well. You need to do all of these things ultimately, maybe not right away. Ultimately, that's where you're going to be headed if you've got high aspirations in this game. And if you're not doing those things and you're just like looking at the odds sim and then putting in a 2-hour session and just doing the same thing the next day, you just can't expect to win. You can't expect to be in the tiny minority of regs that actually beats the game they're playing. It's a small minority, and it's smaller today than it was 5 or 10 years ago by quite some margin. Ask yourself, do you want to treat this like the competitive, ultra professional environment that it has to be, or do you just want to be a reg creational and treat it like a game? And make peace with that decision. But the most maddening place of all for the aspiring poker player is the in-between. And I'll leave you with this thought. If you want the fruits of success that go hand in hand with high conscientiousness and professionalism, but you're not willing to adopt those traits, you're going to go insane and you're going to be bashing your head off of the brick wall of poker for quite some time. And there are nicer things to do with your life than that. If you like the way I think about the game, we have a lot of content on carrotcorner.com, and in case you forgot, code embark25 will allow you to save hundreds on that content. Check out the Golden Carrot Pass for our best value product. I'll see you back here for more poker education really soon. Take it easy, guys. Thanks for watching.